This is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz from Israel 365 News, coming at you live from the Golan. And I'm here with John Enarson, my dear friend, who is going to help walk us through something. We had a great, okay, thank you, Beverly. So I don't know if you can just mention to people, post it on Facebook that we're doing this live video. It's actually a pretty important subject. We stopped doing the videos. It was for various reasons. It fell apart, technical reasons. But to be really honest, the subject matter is so important that we really couldn't ignore it anymore. And also, there was a lot of interest. There weren't a lot of people watching, but there were enough people for whom this was really important, people who felt that the subject matter was important, and it is important. So that's why I'm really excited about doing this. And the subject that we're doing today, which is really, really important, there was something that came on the radar a couple weeks ago, and it was very important. A lot of videos started surfacing about an alleged event at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, where the Jews crowned a Messiah. This was popping up on YouTube, a lot of YouTube videos, even articles, and what did they call him? Jizkiahu? It was
the Spanish way of spelling the name of King Hezekiah, Jizkiahu ben David.
Oh, Jizkiahu, right. So there was a Spanish-speaking element. I believe it was connected to a Chabad rabbi in Argentina.
Breslov, maybe.
He was what we call Chabreslov.
Ah, nice.
Because he was from a Chabad house, and there is a crossover, Chabad and Breslov, which is funny because they used to be very much at odds. And I'm pretty sure he was misunderstood. But the point being, a lot of the press was saying, a lot of the fake news was saying that this rabbi was crowned as the Messiah by the Jews. And unfortunately, most of the thrust of the news was that, of course, we were identifying the wrong Messiah, the antichrist. And I chose not to report on this. I contacted the rabbi's, what we call the gabbai, his I don't know what you call the gabbai, his helper, and they said, look, the rabbi himself actually he's very well known but incredibly modest, and the guy is massively holy. The good thing that came out of this was I got to know about him, and he's the real deal. He's brilliant, gifted, a gifted musician, very holy, very modest, and because of all this, he entirely avoided any of the media. So that's an overview of the story. And John actually followed up on it. He made a video about it. If I post this on YouTube, I'll put up the link to that video. John did an amazing job of being very precise about the facts, which are not easy to be precise about because there were so many lies that it was difficult to be precise about. And not only is it important, the actual facts, but it's also important the implications, what it meant for the rabbi himself. So John, why don't you tell me more of the details of the actual case?
Yeah, just so people understand first, I'm a Christian theology student who heard about this. And first off, I heard about it when I live here in Jerusalem. I study here, and I heard about it actually from a relative in Sweden who sent me, a viral link and said, obviously with the intent of, well, what do you think this is? And I wasn't sure, and I didn't pay much attention at the time. And then you, Adam, posted something on Facebook about it too. It said, "Look, this is not right. The facts are not straight with this." And what it was, there was a rabbi, and his name is Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda Be'eri. He's young. He's 32 years old. He's a Torah genius. He knows vast amounts of the Jewish literature by heart. And he has been speaking more publicly the last couple of years. And he went to the Western Wall.
If I may, if anyone is very interested in this rabbi, which I would highly suggest connecting with him as a rabbi and not as this false story. He's also referred to as the Yanuka. Yanuka is like, it's a word for baby, because apparently he's been this incredible, gifted Torah scholar and living a absolutely profoundly holy life, and since a very young age. So that's why he's referred to as the Yanuka. Yeah. Okay.
So he's been a childhood prodigy, and then now, as he's getting a bit older, he started to teach more publicly. And so in these circles, it's not uncommon that you know, there's people that swarm around them. So there was video from his visit during Passover, not on the Sabbath, but during Passover at the Western Wall for a visit to pray. And a lot of his students and people who heard that he was there flocked around him. And I know I have people that I know who do security for some of these rabbinic events. This is completely common. This is what happens all the time. Sometimes you need a bit of extra security so that the rabbi doesn't get pressed, because there's so many who are swarming around him, and just the amount of people. But somehow a Christian, apparently in Latin America, made a video combining this footage of the rabbi at the Western Wall with another Jewish channel that was discussing the possibility of King Hezekiah in the Bible, whose Hebrew name is Jizkiahu ben David, that he was one of the best candidates for Messiah in Jewish history. So he titled his video, "Name of Messiah Revealed." And so they combined this video, "The Name of Messiah Revealed," with the visit at the Western Wall, and cooked up this viral footage that exploded over the Christian evangelical world. Like, Israel crowns the Messiah at the Western Wall. His name is Jizkiahu ben David. It's some of the worst Christian fake news I've ever seen. It's tragic, it's fake, and it wasn't that easy to tell, because there was, wherever the original came from, there were so many lies baked into the video by the videos being produced, video upon video upon video on YouTube, saying this guy's name is Jizkiahu ben David, and he's being proclaimed the Jewish Messiah at the Western Wall. And then they started saying, like, maybe he's 50-something years old, one of his parents is Muslim, one's Jewish, you know, just outright inaccuracies of every kind, just piling on top of this story, going around the world. And you start seeing videos in I've seen, I believe, I assume it's Hindi, like India in languages, in German. And some of these videos have about, I don't know, 500,000 views just on YouTube alone. I know at least 2 videos have around 500,000 views. So even though this was, you know, it's been a couple of weeks, you know, maybe 4 weeks since this was at its height, it's already out there, and people are going to remember this, and only a fraction are going to hear the truth. So it was a massive slander of this guy. All he did was visit the Western Wall, and for some reason news exploded. On the positive side, I think it's positive that people are watching Israel so closely, and that people are that interested that a little video snippet from the Western Wall can get people interested. And I think people are attuned to that we're living in unprecedented times. If I want to look at something positive out of this, it's that. But second, you know, the other aspect is these are some of the worst Christian fake news I have ever seen in my life. And it's and then one of the rabbi's students reached out to me and said, you seem to know how to talk to Christians and you respect Judaism. Is there something you can do? So I made a video, and I think we need to spread the truth about what this happened, what the truth really is, that this seems to be a great young guy.
You touched on actually a very important point. I've been writing my news articles, for better or worse, for over 6 years, 7 years, something like that. I lost track. And I write about prophecy. I write about Geula, redemption, Mashiach, Messiah. And you've been in my house, John. I'm a pretty mainstream Jewish guy. I've got my weird things, but usually that's saved for like the way I make my coffee and stuff like that. When it comes to Judaism, I'm fairly mainstream, but when I write these articles, what I'm doing actually is Judaism for a long time did not speak about Geula, about Messiah. I think there's a couple reasons. One is there have been false messiahs in Jewish history, and they've been catastrophic for Judaism. There was Shabtai Tzvi, there was Bar Kokhba. Whenever there's a false messiah, people die. It's not a good thing. And another reason, and I'm wondering if this is true, it's something I suspect, that since Christianity is very wrapped up in the concept of Messiah, Judaism kind of avoids it, so as not to be like Christianity. So when I started writing about Messiah, a lot of Jews were a bit shocked. I mean, it's not. There are branches of Judaism that speak about Messiah quite a bit, like Chabad, and even they get their share of suspect. They're like, wow, Chabad. But Jews are not used to talking about the Messiah, in part, especially connecting with Christians about it. All of a sudden, I was being called a Christian missionary. So the concept of Messiah has been really repressed and suppressed, and we don't talk about it. So when I started talking about it and writing about it, it really made some not so nice waves. People were a little shocked and even angry at me. At the same time, I did get a lot of Christians who were very enthusiastic about it, but I also got this weird thing. You said, yeah, there's something going on here. As a mainstream Jew who all of a sudden started looking for signs of the final redemption in Israel, like bang, they're happening every single day. It's flowing. There's no question. And so the Christians, many Christians are interested in that because it's really happening. I mean, just the fact that the Jews are back in Israel is messianic. But there's, of course, the point at which they have to say, but this is the Jews, so we don't accept it entirely.
Maybe I think one more positive, it goes even further than that. Many of these people had paid close attention to some of the things that were published by, I believe, you as well, about Rabbi Kaduri talking about two Benjamins. I know it was reported in J-Post as well. Two Benjamins, like a governmental crisis.
Oh, that, yeah,
governmental
sure.
crisis when two Benjamins were standing for government and they couldn't form a government.
Yeah, sure.
Right, and so people were even aware of these things and thought, like, maybe this is connected, right? Like maybe this event at Passover, now we're at this government crisis in Israel. Possibly something could be happening. And so a bunch of people tuned in. So they were even read in at that level. My problem is that I think that this information, Christians need to get more educated on how to interpret that information. Because a lot of people were like, okay, so this means it's what the Christians call the antichrist, the ultimate false messiah. And that is a problem for me.
Right. It's interesting because I work on the belief that if we're going to take the next step, um, we're going to have to connect Jews and Christians. We're going to be a light unto the nations. The nations have to be willing to receive that light, and the Jews have to be willing to give over that light, which is a different struggle that I'm working on. But there's this inherent suspicion, this inherent division that's keeping us apart. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the concept of antichrist was not Judaism until recently. The concept of antichrist was the Catholic Church.
So this has gone back and forth. I think it crept in as a seed. So like we are obviously going to have differences, otherwise we would all believe the same. Sure. But there are differences that I don't think need to exist or should exist. Like some of them, one of them being this whole idea of a supposed Jewish antichrist. And that's what I really wanted to address in the video, because as the final redemption draws closer, as people continue to watch Israel, I don't want Christians to keep hammering on these points. And as anti-Semitism, even in Christian circles, is at levels I thought it would never be in my lifetime, I really felt it was important that we educate in the Christian world. So
I want to emphasize at this point that so far as I know, and I hear Beverly put up the concept of Armelius.
Yeah, Armelius.
I was told that I had never heard of it. Okay. I was in yeshiva for 10 years. I never heard anything similar to the, I don't believe that there is a concept of antichrist in Judaism. And the literature that I've read on the Jewish eschatology, and Mashiach, does not include any concept of antichrist. Islam does.
Yes.
Islam has a concept of a deceiver.
I believe they even took some of the tradition, at least from my perspective, they've copied both from the Christian and the Jewish tradition when it comes to Antichrist.
Quite possibly.
Even the kind of obscure Jewish Antichrist figure, Armelius.
Okay, I just want to point out, Beverly, I'm not going to speak about Armelius. The reason being, as an Orthodox Jew for now more than half of my life, and as I said, as a not entirely unlearned Jew, I had never ever heard the term. I think the only reason why it's of interest to you is because it is a Christian concept. It may have, a passing basis in Judaism, but it is not a concept that we connect to Messiah that I'm aware of.
So you mentioned, like, isn't it true that it's been the Catholic Church and the Roman papacy or the office of the Pope that's often been the Antichrist in Christian history? And it's absolutely true. Essentially, all the reformers, Martin Luther, Calvin, John Knox, Wycliffe, Tyndale, you name them, they believed that the Pope was the historic, the office of the Pope was the historic Antichrist, and they even included it in the Westminster Confession, which is like a major Protestant confession. It's like part of the Articles of Faith, if you will. So that was for a long time the view. But when I dug into the research of this, because of this video and what happened with poor Rabbi Barry at the Western Wall, I knew that it had planted an early, as anti-Semitism crept in a bit in the early church, like 2nd century, 3rd century, that the idea of a Jewish Antichrist came in pretty early, smaller idea.
Really?
But it was mostly always focused on, the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was around at that time. The Roman Empire was persecuting Christians at the time.
It's funny, we don't have Antichrist. However, the Vatican does have a special place in our heart, so to say. And the reason it's for me, and I believe rightfully so, the Vatican is the living embodiment of replacement theology. The reason being, after the temple was destroyed, the Vatican was built as a replacement for the temple. The high priest, the Kohen Gadol, before Yom Kippur, he goes and isolates himself from his wife for 2 weeks in order to maintain his ritual purity. And I think that's really the basis of the whole celibacy thing, which is anti-Torah.
It's
And
at
I
that
mean, a
New
lot of
Testament as well.
that's interesting.
Clearly.
I'm not going to argue with you on that. I'll take that at face value, and I'm going to say that you're right. But just the whole thing with the incense, and I remember once I was up on Arbel, and I imagine a Catholic group showed up, and they sat down, and the priest pulled out the little talus, the little, thing, put on a kippah
Right.
on his head, and wine and wafers, and I'm like, he's doing kiddush on, like Friday night kiddush on the mountaintop. So a lot of the rituals are based in the temple. So it really came to replace the temple. I had this epiphany, which I don't have often once, where I have this theory that the temple and the Vatican cannot coexist at the same time. They cannot be coincidental. And we're coming up on Third Temple times, so I can see that being an issue. And that
For
would be an
me,
issue.
the problem is, as a evangelical Protestant who was part of the protest against this movement, when the early church married itself to essentially become the inheritors of Rome after Constantine, that's when things started to go downhill a lot. So as much as Christianity wants to identify itself with Rome instead of with Jerusalem, I believe it's a real problem.
Mm, mm.
That's a real problem. As long
So
as
when we were talking about Judaism being the antichrist, the way you and I became friends, in the first place at that conference several years ago, was you were working to overcome Christian reluctance to the Third Temple, I believe. You had a couple of other agendas, and we've done a video on, does Christianity view the Third Temple as the temple of the Antichrist? And as an Orthodox Jew, and especially as an Orthodox Jew living in Israel now and working towards Geula, working towards redemption, I'm going to be working towards the Third Temple. And I have a lot of dear Christian friends, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna hide the cards. This is what I'm doing. I'm working towards the Third Temple. I would like to believe that it is not a problem for Christianity. I'd like to believe that it could be a hugely positive thing for Christianity if the Jews build the Third Temple. I think it was a hugely positive thing that Jews came back to Israel. So our redemptive fates are intertwined, and I think also on insofar as the temple, as the Third Temple. So I would like to think it's not the temple of the Antichrist. So here we have, a rabbi who was not, but let's say we do crown a Messiah. If the overwhelming reaction is that the Jews are bringing the Antichrist into the world, well, that's a problem.
That is a real problem. So first, one of the things I addressed in my video is that should some Jewish people proclaim somebody to be a potential Messiah, that does not make it that person the Antichrist in Christian theology. It happened with Bar Kokhba. It happened with Shabbatai Tzvi in the 1600s. I mean, large parts of the entire Jewish world started packing their bags, getting ready to go back to Israel, only to be thoroughly disappointed. And the point is, that does not make that person the Antichrist of the book of Revelation. That's really, really important. Secondly, when it comes to our explicit texts about the Antichrist, I argue that it is complete reversal of the biblical picture to point it to a religious Jewish person. But in Catholic Europe, before the Protestant Reformation, like 1200s, 1300s, 1400s, leading up even to the 1500s, when the Protestant Reformation broke through and kind of changed history, medieval Europe was obsessed with this anti-Semitic idea that the Jewish people at any moment were going to give birth to the Messiah. He was going to be the son of like the devil and some Jewish woman. It was going to come from Baghdad or from Babylon somewhere, and he was going to take the lost tribes somewhere over the Caucasus in the mountains there and come and destroy all the Christians throughout Europe. And they would, these theories would get more and more elaborate and piled on top of each other, and there would be reports around Europe that he's been seen now, and they would compose plays and dramas and enact them in Europe, and it would stir up the crowds into a frenzy, and you would need soldiers to protect the Jewish neighborhoods and ghettos from the mob violence that would result from these incredible plays. And for me, I really saw what an incredibly devilish tool this was to
I was trying to say, it
Like,
sounds incredible, in retrospect. You're like, oh, those crazy, backwards people who viewed the Jews that way. Well, we just saw it happen again.
right. I think we look down on the Dark Ages as being this incredibly superstitious time in which people would be gullible and believe anything and then act upon it. But I think we have such a high view of ourselves looking back at history. I think we live in an information age where the same thing happens. There's just too much information that we can't even sort out what's true and what's not. And people just go for it. And we're just as gullible today. And
I would say even more so, unfortunately.
And it's even faster, right? The information age is almost instant. So, and if you want to get on a crusade, if it's the right thing that fits into the spirit of the times, you could get on something like, let's say it was climate change and you wanted to go on a crusade, it's not going to be the exact one for one, but you can sway the masses fast. And human nature is the same as it was in the Middle Ages. So, the Protestant Reformation shifted all that by getting back to the Bible, getting back to the Hebrew Bible, to the New Testament. And the result, when people started reading the sources again, was it's not a Jewish Antichrist. That's the main picture. I mean, theoretically, maybe you could make it possible, but it is not the picture that's given at all. It's the opposite. It's an enemy of the Jewish people.
That's very interesting you're saying that, because so what you're saying is, as a Jew, what I would want the Christians to do is to open their own books and study more and be more devout Christians and more learned Christians, and I'll have less danger of them hating me for bringing out the Antichrist.
Yes, and especially connecting to their Jewish roots. So I point out this in my video when it comes, both Jesus and Paul talk about what is traditionally connected to the belief in the ultimate false Messiah, the Antichrist. Both of them talk about the story of Hanukkah. So it is the classic Jewish Hanukkah story in which Antiochus Epiphanes defiles the temple. He persecutes the Jewish people. He tries to get them to deny God publicly, to force them to stop keeping kosher, stop keeping Shabbat. And he puts an idol of himself as Zeus in the temple and defiles it and slaughters a pig in the temple. Both Jesus and Paul refer to as what's classically understood as the Antichrist, but that something like this may happen in the future, which the Protestant reformers like Luther and Calvin and these guys took in a spiritual sense, that the Pope has taken a terrible assumed power for himself and put himself in our spiritual temple of the church, and that's why he's the antichrist. But regardless of whether you take it spiritually or you take it literally, it's the complete opposite of a Jew. It's somebody that's against the Jewish people. It's a wicked Roman or Greek or, Gentile, pagan, idol worshiping empire or kingdom or king like this. It's like people miss the forest for the trees. Look at the big picture. It's the complete opposite of a religious Jewish person. And it's the complete opposite of somebody that, like, a lot of Christians out there think like, yeah, the third temple's coming, but it's the Antichrist that wants to build it for himself. So I'm like, if you look at Antiochus Epiphanes, that was the enemy of the temple, of the second temple, right? He wanted to stop. He put a stop to the offerings that were done in the temple. He defiled it completely. He hated it. He showed real like animus towards it with slaughtering a pig. Like, how much more could you get, right, towards God? And putting Zeus on top of the altar.
Which is pretty anti-Jewish.
Just mildly, right? Could you think of a more anti-Jewish guy? I mean, it would have to be somebody like Hitler, right?
Right. Well, okay. So I want to make it clear what we are saying is no Jew acknowledged this rabbi as the Messiah King. He did not call himself the Messiah King. And anyone they even got the name wrong. His name is not Jizkiahu or Jizkiahu or and what we saw was another episode of Jews being blamed for something horribly anti-Christian, and it was all based on fallacy.
It was all based on lies. Like, first of all, it's just the truth. Christianity is supposed to be about the truth, and the whole thing is lies from top to bottom. The footage is real. And then a lot of people say like, well, what a wild scene. This is Hasidic Judaism in some sense. This is not very usual for Christians. And they're like, well, like, why are they like Justin Bieber fans around this guy? And I'm like, how blind can we be in one sense? Like, first of all, why should people be more excited about Justin Bieber than about something that's like scriptural and biblical or connected with God, right? So first of all, like, what do you care? Second is charismatic Christians who are very much into prayer. Like, if you were to watch like some revival meetings, they are way more wild than what you saw at the Western Wall. So how can like Christians from around the world be making like fun of this? Like, oh, what a strange sight. I'm like, first of all, it's completely normal. Second, have you looked in the mirror?
It's funny you say that. I was wondering when it first started coming out, I was looking at the videos and I was thinking, if I was a Christian, I remember one time, there's one time a buddy brought his family to the yeshiva. And at that time I was learning in Badai Yeshiva, and I had long fuzzy payas down to here. I had a long beard down to here, and my kippah was even bigger. I never went the route of black hat, but I used to hang out in that world. And his family came, and we were trying to be like, we take our payas and we tie him on top of the kippah and say, the only reason why I grow our hair this way is to stop our kippahs from flowing off in the wind. And after a week, the family walked up to the rabbi, who actually wore a shtreimel, the furry hat, and they said, wow, I guess you guys are normal. And he's like, yeah, we just, deprive them of sleep, feed them lots of carbohydrates, but we're not a cult. And I was looking at these videos, and I was thinking, certainly there's no question that from the outside, religious Jews look very weird. There's no, we do. I mean, even now I'm kind of like more presentable, but you can definitely see I got something going on. And I was looking at these videos, and there is, when they were showing enormous respect to this young man, you know, there's the garb, which makes everything look weird. Um, After a while, you get very used to it. And it is a bit. I'll tell you, it's a bit of an optical illusion in that you have, you know, thousands of people wearing, you know, this particular garb, the black, the big hat, and they're not all the same. Some of them are not knowledgeable. Some of them, I will say that, you know, all of them are much more involved in their Torah lifestyle than and sometimes to an extreme degree, though it's not always based in knowledge. Judaism has a, you know, everyone says, well, I'm a Jew, so my opinion counts. No, it doesn't. Judaism has a knowledge base. Not everyone who wears that garb has that knowledge base. Many of them do. So, and some of the activities, when you show respect for a big rabbi, oh, Shelley Neese is with us. Wow, I'm honored. Shelley. Yeah, we can talk about that. I want Shelley to be a guest. Do you know Shelley Neese? I'd love to introduce you. She's really brilliant. She's really brilliant. So from the outside, you'll see the rabbis talking to each other in a certain way. When you show respect for a rabbi, and this is explicitly written in the Talmud, you're not showing respect for the rabbi. You're showing respect for the Torah that's inside of him. Okay, the person, a real Eved Hashem, a real servant of God, has turned himself into a vessel for serving God. So, and filled himself up with Torah and with mitzvot, with the commandments, serving God. So when you see these rabbis showing respect in a rather exuberant way, kissing his hand, you know, just the whole, it is not incredibly unusual. And as far as I know, it's always deserved. And it's not like he's the Messiah. It's like, wow, he's a really exceptional guy. And in this case, the Yanuka, this young rabbi, he was deserving of the respect. He's brilliant, he's holy, and he's definitely a special light unto this generation. But at the same time, this was not like, wow, we've never done this before. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
I want to say on a positive side that whoever I've contacted about this has been very much wanting to spread the truth. And if anybody's even seen or has, you know, we need to counteract the definitely, I know more than 1 million people for sure, maybe 2 million, maybe more, have seen this report and have it logged in the back of their mind. Like, what was that? Could it be something? I'll keep it in mind for the future. So spread the truth. And I want to report the exciting thing is that a couple of big names in the evangelical world were willing to address it specifically. Joel Richardson, who is a big time author, I think a New York Times bestseller when it comes to Christian prophecy, reposted the entire video on his YouTube channel and tweeted it out.
Yay.
And
I got the impression, though, and maybe I'm too cynical and I'm an angry old man, which makes sense since I was an angry young man, that this was almost like people waiting in the wings looking for an opportunity to express their hatred, distrust of the Jews, say, ha ha ha, here they are with pulling out the antichrist that we always knew they were hiding away somewhere.
So that's what we need to change. And I know Joel, not just wanting to combat the truth, I know Joel Richardson has had debates with people about the supposed idea that the Jew should be an antichrist and called on Christians to not only reject the idea, but to repent from the idea. So that was positive. And the second thing is that, you know, whatever theological stream you are, we should be able to unite on that deceit is wrong and truth is right. And, you know, Dr. Michael Brown, who's a major voice in the evangelical world in America, did a whole segment on it and said this is massive fake news, total fake news. And he
Great.
brought out some beautiful extra details about, he said, according to, like, he was reading Mishpacha magazine and some of the different reports about the Yanukah, the Rabbi Be'eri, the young man, that apparently he's the only child of a Jewish family who obviously wanted a child, and he became a Torah prodigy. So this was seen in the Jewish world as a great, great blessing, which is why there might be so much excitement about him. And whatever, I've been so impressed with whatever, like, people were looking for things they could use, clips of him speaking, and the clips that I've seen of him speaking were like just passionate exhortations to love one another, to reject baseless hatred. And I'm like,
ironically, I have to say, though, the nicest thing that came out of this is that I was I came to know about this man who's really a light unto the generation, not Mashiach, not Messiah, that I know of, but at the very least, he's a powerful light of good to the generation. And we have a saying, you know, if you learn the laws of ritual purity, impurity can only attach itself to something that has holiness in it. So unfortunately, in this case, you have a truly holy man, and of course the powers of darkness are going to try to make him impure, and I think that's what happened here.
It's just shocking that would happen to somebody like that. And I've had more than one comment on my videos. They're like, I think I like that guy. You know, from the Christian world. It's like, what a nice young man. And so I'm saying, like, from just as a Christian, I'm sorry that this happened, and I think we should all educate on the matter of the debate about a Jewish antichrist. I think biblically that's a bad and wrong idea, and spread the truth out there. And then secondly, I mean, whoever can, send a note of support for, you know, this rabbi, as saying, look, not all Christians are like this. We're sorry it happened, and blessings from us, you know?
Absolutely. So, John, I think we're going to stop it here. For the people who were with us, this is a hugely important subject. John and I are going to be, we were meeting every week before Passover, and we kind of fell out of it. And we're discussing issues that aren't normally discussed that need to be discussed. For example, the Antichrist. Is the third temple Antichrist? We're also going to be talking about the Jewish perception of idolatry and how and if it applies to Christianity. That's going to be a very explosive subject that we're going to go dancing through the minefields, juggling, like I say, juggling hand grenades. And ooh, where did this pin come from? It's definitely explosive, but it's something that I think needs to be addressed. From the Jewish side and from the Christian side, in order to build that bridge. If there's other stuff you'd like to, we're still working out the technical issues. To be honest, I'm not in love with this Facebook Live. I love the comments. I have to work out how we're going to do a live format. If you have any feedback at all, please feel free to tell me. We need the feedback. Any subjects you'd like us to discuss. I'm going to post a video on our website page, on our Facebook page. I spoke with Rabbi Tovia Singer about the Christian family that went underground as Orthodox Jews, posing when they were actually missionaries. These are the big issues. These are the explosive ones. This is not, you know, kumbaya, feel good interfaith. This is, I think, the stuff that has to be ironed out, banged out between Jews and Christians for us to come closer. That being said, John, I can't thank you enough. You're turning into my best buddy.
I really appreciate you, Rabbi Berkowitz, very much.
Okay, there's a condition. Don't call me Rabbi. Okay, it's accurate. It's just not desirable on any level. Okay. Thank you
Thank you
all.
so much.
And be blessed. If you bless us, we have to bless you back because we're in Israel and that's the rule. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great day.